Hello everyone, this is Eye on Africa for Thursday, September 15th. Here are the headlines. The European Parliament votes in favor of a resolution criticizing an oil mega project in Uganda and Tanzania. The text raises serious questions about the actions of energy giant Total, with members of Parliament saying the project has led to evictions and arrests. The United Nations published a report shedding light on increased human rights violations in Burkina Faso. Most of the accusations are aimed at Burkina Faso armed forces. The document says they are using excessive force against civilians. And the tourism industry in Tunisia says goodbye to a better summer season than last year, but still far from what the country was used to before the pandemic. Luckily, domestic tourists and Tunisians living abroad showed up in large numbers, allowing the sector to dodge another abysmal few months. Good to have you with us. We begin in Strasbourg, where the European Parliament has voted in favor of a resolution that strongly criticizes French oil giant TotalEnergies over a pipeline project in Uganda and Tanzania. The $10 billion investment will link the two countries and be used to export around 200,000 barrels of oil per day. But the resolution passed today in Strasbourg raises serious concerns about, quote, human rights violations that includes the eviction of hundreds of people without adequate compensation and wrongful imprisonment of people who voiced opposition to the project. Caroline Lambolet has this report.
Members of European Parliament on Thursday delivered a slap to French oil giant TotalEnergies. They voiced their grave concern about human rights violations in Uganda and Tanzania, where the group is planning to build a 1,400-kilometer pipeline in the Lake Albert region of Uganda. Oil will be delivered through the pipeline to the Tanzanian port of Tanga. They said the project has affected nearly 118,000 people.
Some have had their homes destroyed to facilitate the construction of access roads or the processing plant. Others have had all or part of their land requisitioned and have lost the free use of their properties and thus their means of subsistence without prior payment of fair and adequate compensation.
The resolution also mentions the case of a local who testified in a French court against Total and was subsequently threatened with murder. Total has been facing legal action in France since 2019 over allegations that it failed to put in place an adequate vigilance plan for its project. On Thursday morning, it dismissed fresh criticism sparked by the vote in this tweet.
Uganda and Tanzania are sovereign states which have made the strategic decision to exploit their natural resources to contribute to the development of their country.
The oil giant told France 24 in a statement that it was doing everything it can to make it an exemplary project. Previously, it has recognized that the environmental and social context was sensitive and that the project requires land acquisition programs. But Thursday's resolution will not have any legal effects. It calls on Total to take 1 year before launching the project.
Well, joining me now is one of the people who put forward that resolution at the EU Parliament today, Belgian Socialist MEP Maria Arena. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. We saw in that report, we heard some of the things that you and your team found while you were in Uganda. But this is a non-binding resolution, so no one is really obligated to do anything. What are you hoping to achieve with today's vote?
I think it's a very strong political message that we succeeded in having in this European Parliament, with a broad majority of MEPs voting to tell to Total, but also to the Ugandan government, that this project is a wrong project. Not only for the environmental issue, because as you know, it is more than 200,000 barrels per day from oil, but it is also more than 100,000 people being directly affected by this without having the appropriate compensation. So it is really something that we want to stop. This resolution is not mandatory, as you said, but we are working for the moment in different action. There is a case in France against Total because of grave violation of human rights. And we are working at the European Parliament on the due diligence mechanism to make responsibility on these kind of companies and also having remedies for people. So I think it's a very strong message that we send to these companies.
We may have some viewers right now who are thinking, well, The Ugandan and Tanzanian governments want this. Why is the European Parliament getting involved in Africa's business?
It's because they are doing it with European business. So what we are asking for is that these European businesses, but also the partners of Europe, and Uganda is one of the partners of Europe, and we have a lot of development aid program, that we can respect the Green Deal. And so this is the first thing, is how it is possible to help Uganda, because we need to help the country, but with new energy in the country. And this is how it is possible to respect the Green Deal in the global, also in the global south. It is not to say that Uganda is responsible from the oil extraction, but we have to help them.
Maria Arena, member of the European Parliament, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Well, earlier this week, the United Nations published a report shedding light on increased human rights violations in Burkina Faso. These accusations are mostly aimed at Burkina armed forces who are allegedly using excessive force against civilians during these operations. France 24's Sophie Lamotte reports.
They say the human rights situation is worsening and they're pointing fingers at armed forces. The human rights defender organization in Ouagadougou held a national forum this week to assess the human rights situation in the country. They spoke with activists, with journalists, organization about the abuses they had personally suffered, and the results are damning. Participants say they're being directly targeted, sometimes threatened, wrongfully arrested, and even tortured by armed forces. Human rights defenders are recognized and protected under Burkina law since 2017, but their lived experiences don't always reflect that. Take a listen at one of the activists present at the forum.
We've seen some comrades being threatened with weapons, their property being destroyed and burned to the ground, intimidation. We've seen it all. And it's a daily occurrence. We're always being either misunderstood, misjudged, or accused of defamation.
And activists also say they're unable to denounce these abuses because those who do speak out are accused of complicity with the enemy. These abuses have been condemned by the government and by the UN earlier this week, but activists are calling for stronger measures and for investigations over the conduct and misconduct of armed forces that are ever more present in the country due to rising insecurity since 2016.
Now to the situation in Mali. The country is continuing to isolate itself on the diplomatic front. That has led to a worsening of the security situation near the border with Niger. The government is currently pushing for the return of internally displaced people to their villages. But as France 24's Harold Girard tells us, many of them don't believe in lasting peace in the area.
The village of Tondikiwindi in Niger is just 100 kilometers away from Mali. It's in the heart of the border areas that have been targeted by terror attacks by the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda-affiliated groups. Karim Ouassad fled Tingara 3 years ago because of the terrorist violence. Now, he represents the displaced people of Tondikiwindi.
In the name of God, they keep attacking. There's still insecurity near my village. It's just wrong. It's wrong. For now, we don't know what the new forces in Niger will bring. But when things calm down, we will know. Up until now, you can't go into the area without protection. When the villagers were brought back, the government set up some security measures, but it remains limited. The villagers can't even go 10 kilometers away to cultivate.
The August rainy season is a key period for farmers, desperate to tend to their fields and avoid another year of food shortages. It's one of the reasons why Niger's government is trying to encourage displaced communities to head back to their villages. But many who fled still don't think it's safe to return.
Government officers are trying to get us to go back home, but we don't feel safe.
In Tondikiwindi, local authorities are the first to take in the displaced people. The closer the village is to the border, the greater is the risk of attack. But few in the region escape the fear of an escalation in violence.
Yes, it's a concern because the problem came from Mali starting in 2012. You know, the problem with terrorism is not just the military side, but also the development and the social cohesion.
Hassan Alidou is one of many locals who are frustrated by the deteriorating relations between Mali and Niger. In fact, Niger's government and the Malian military junta still disagree over whether to work with foreign armies to fight terrorism.
In the Northern Hemisphere, summer is slowly drawing to a close, which also means the end of the tourist season for many countries. In Tunisia, the industry is taking stock after a lackluster recovery. Despite less Russians, Ukrainians, and Algerians traveling to the country, domestic tourism and Tunisians abroad traveling to Tunisia did help keep the sector afloat over the past few months. Lilia Blaise, Hamdit Lili, and Fadil Ali Reza report.
In the seaside resort of Hammamet, many hotels were fully booked again this year, but not with the usual tourists. Francesco is a Franco-Italian who's been coming to Tunisia for 15 years with his family. He's noticed the change.
I didn't see many French people really, and no other Europeans. It's local tourism. Algerians, Libyans.
Some visitors from further afield have been put off by a lack of flights and higher ticket prices. As of the end of August, Tunisia welcomed 4.1 million tourists, a turnout that's still better than 2021.
We noticed a massive return of Tunisians living abroad this year. It's a pretty good trend.
But Tunisia's hospitality sector is still bearing the brunt of an economic crisis that's seen inflation top 8%. Even after the border reopened in July, price increases have kept some Algerian tourists away.
Hotel prices increased significantly. That spike in prices is in line with the rising cost of living in Tunisia. The cost of all consumer products has gone up.
In smaller, less-known towns like Libya, domestic tourism has brought the summer season back to life.
It's the first time I've visited. We came for a week with my wife and children. We wanted a bit of change this year because we're originally from Jamel and the sea is very beautiful here.
Businesses welcome this influx of Tunisians from around the country.
For us, in summer, it's really important to work because the winter is the dead season here. So it's great everyone came, everyone is working. To give you an example, there are so many people that we had to queue for half an hour just to buy eggs.
The season was a partial success but below expectations. The recovery will buy some Tunisians breathing room before the school year starts, but a difficult winter lies ahead.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Eye on Africa for this Thursday. Thank you very much for watching. The news continues on France 24 right after this.